She just wanted to have a good time. I mean, yeah, she wanted attention and she wanted to see how many boys she could get to hankering after. And yeah, I guess she was flirty. I don't know today what she'd be called, but she got called a lot of stuff and her mommy was worried to death. But you know what? One day a neighbor's family moved down the road, the Fenton family. And first time Holly saw Albert William Fenton, she absolutely forgot about every other boy there was. She just plumb lost her heart. And she, everybody else talked about Little Willie, and he was wild just like everybody was saying Polly was. But now Polly intended to marry Willie. So they got to courting, and now Polly, she knew her daddy would take the hide off her with his belt if she got out and run around. But Willie begged her to, and they'd been going together, 2 or 3 months, I guess. And he begged her to sneak out and meet him down by the river. There was a glade where a lot of people went down there when they was courting. And she waited, everybody went to sleep, and climbed out the window, and right down through there she went. Knowing her mommy, and she knew when she got back what would happen. But she met Willie about halfway going down there. And she smelled whiskey on him. She said, "Now he's been drinking, I can tell that." But he was already mad at her because he said all these boys, she was just begging them, leading them on. And she said, "No, Willie, you're the only boy I love." He didn't believe it. And so he was going down through there, and he was first hugged her, and then he's got what they call kind of hands in. He was doing things she didn't want to do. And she said, "Now, Willie, let's go on down to the and talk. You're just drinking." And he was saying, started cussing some, and she said, "Now, Willie, you can't do this. We can't sit down and talk if you're going to act like this." And he said, "Well, you didn't mind them other boys." And she said, "Well, I didn't never like those other boys." "Well, I'm sure they thought you loved them just like you're trying to fool me." And went on down, he was still so drunk, and she got down, she saw this big hole. And there was a shovel in there. And she said, "What in the world is that?" And she turned around, and Willie had a big long knife out, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. I may not get you, but no other boy will either." And it scared her to death. But Polly was a farmer's daughter, and she grabbed up that shovel, and she was trying to back away from Willie, and he was backing her towards the river, and she hit out at him, and she thought she knocked the knife out of his hand, but she didn't know. But you know what? She lost her footing when she hit at him with that big shovel and went right backwards in the river. But now, see, all them, that was their swimming hole. In the summer, they fixed that swimming hole, and there was an overhang of rocks, and all the girls went over there to change their clothes. So Polly, she goes underwater and gets up to that place, and she hides. And Willie, undoubtedly, she didn't hurt him. She's afraid she knocked him out, but he comes down, and he gets in the water, and he's hollering for her, and it was tickling her to death to think he's really crazy about it. Because she really didn't think, she thought he was just drunk, he wasn't going to kill her, but she wasn't going to let nobody get that chance either. So she waited and waited. He cussed and he hollered and all that, but she never come up nowhere. He went around and around, couldn't find her. And finally, she heard him go back up the bank. And she thought, "Stop, he thinks he's drowning me, and I just let that worry on his mind." And she sat there a few minutes, and she was wet as she could be. And she said, "Well, what am I going to do now? If I go back home, Daddy's going to beat the life out of me. And Willie won't pay nothing. Everybody in the whole area will be laughing and said, 'I told you them flirty ways are going to get you in trouble.'" And so she said, "Well, I guess it did." She said, "What am I going to do?" And she thought and thought, and she thought, "I'll just go on down this river, and the first town I come to, I'll just climb out and try to get some help." And that's what she done. Now, she didn't know what happened to Willie, and she knew it was a word number this, but she thought, "I'll wait a while and then I'll go back home." But she heard on the radio that they'd arrested little Willie for her murder. And that tickled her too. She said, "I guess he'll learn. I bet that's a lesson he'll never learn." He wished he hadn't learned. And you know what? Polly just went right on and stayed in that town and never did go back. And she got married. She just worked in a clothing store. But she got married, and she had 2 or 3 girls of her own. And she never did tell nobody, because she got to figuring, well, if he went to prison or whatever happened to him, they'd get hurt. And for her not speaking up. So she just raised her children and kept quiet. And nobody would have ever known, but she told her youngest daughter on her deathbed, and she said, I just got to confess. And she told her, and that woman her daughter was my mama. And Mommy told me that that was the last things that her mommy ever told her. So that's the true story, pretty Paul.
All right.